Hello, hello, hello. Hope everyone is having a great Friday. I am feeling much better today. I ended up spending a good portion of my day kind of hanging out, trying to catch up on good rest. I was also hanging out with the kiddos, and we went to watch a movie during the middle of the day, which is always nice. It's fun. Um, Normally, I work throughout the day, but I was like, I'm just going to go out and then I'll just catch up on work a little bit later. And yeah, I'm happy I did. I felt really inspired. I want to do a speed painting. Do an 8 minute speed paint. Ooh, can I actually scale this up? Ooh, that's the biggest I can get it without it sizing too much. Um, you know, I want to put a little chime on it. It doesn't chime for whatever reason. I actually have to like look. And so I sometimes miss it. So here, let me put it over here. Maybe I won't miss it this time. Yeah, we went and saw Thunderbolts. Yeah, let me go ahead and get started. And man, I really liked the movie. Um, I will say for like a Marvel movie, probably a B minus, C plus, just because they're just so much better Marvel movies, you know? But for just like a film with cool stuff that happened to it, like there were some fight scenes too, especially in the beginning and in the middle. There was like some really freaking awesome fight scenes. I was just like, dang, dude, that's right. This stuff can be really awesome. Um, but generally speaking, it had some of its moments where I felt like it could have been better, and maybe it would have been a great film. One of the key factors here, I think, is really leaning into Sentry and the Void a lot more. That whole narrative. I think it was caught between two ideas. One, which is kind of the idea of what Civil War did, or Winter Soldier did, which is this kind of spy espionage film strategy. Well, actually, let me back up a little bit. One thing that I think Marvel did really well was kind of take a genre of films, like a genre of a film, and then attach a superhero to it. You know, and the best examples of this is Civil War. Like Civil War and Winter Soldier were like spy espionage films, and they leaned into that. And then like Ant-Man was kind of like a heist movie. I mean, even in Endgame, that's kind of the whole point. It's like a time heist, you know, and it just works. It works when you kind of like take a genre and make the superhero vibe fit in that genre of film. What's another good example? I mean, just looking at like even Iron Man. Iron Man was kind of like a movie that had like the notes of like War Dogs, but with a superhero, you know, which is really cool. And so I think like a lot more of that would have been great. And so when I was watching Thunderbolts, there's some obvious notes even from the trailer that you can kind of get an idea of where they were heading. One of them was just like this band of misfits, you know what I mean, kind of coming together to form basically a superhero team called the Thunderbolts. And so to me, like I get that part, but it felt like it should have been more cerebral, especially when you start to consider how the ending was. It almost it almost makes me feel like the fact that they didn't double down on that was an entire waste of like the first and second act of the film. Because the third act is like almost entirely cerebral. And I was just like, oh my gosh. Like all the notes to make it that were there, but they probably could have done a better job. And again, I don't want to spoil too much. Actually, this is not gonna be a speed painting after all. I was like, I'm gonna do speed painting because I'm gonna get back to work. I'm gonna absolutely not get back to work after this. I'm gonna keep painting this until this is cool looking. Um, yeah, I'm not gonna even bother. I'm just gonna keep painting. Uh, so one of the things that I will say, let me preface, spoiler alert. You guys have been warned, for those of you who have not seen Thunderbolt, if that matters to you. If you weren't going to see it or you do not care, then stick around. So I'm going to give you my thoughts about the film. And we'll just kind of turn this video into a movie review. So 3, 2, 1, spoiler alert. So the movie has a character called Sentry, which I think most people are aware of. And Sentry essentially has this dark side about them. I think this is one of the things that makes it an incredibly fascinating hero, is that they're essentially super powerful, like just as powerful as DC's Superman, you know? And I think that was kind of the point. Like, it was supposed to be the answer to Superman, like their version of like that story. As far as I can tell, I'm not a huge comic book buff, so I could get a lot of this wrong. But I think that's what the vibe is supposed to be. Even like he has a cape, kind of has like a superhero vibe to him. Like stronger than beyond anyone can understand and realize, you know. And the thing that I liked about that premise of him being that is that his weakness is that he would essentially turn, like, if he doesn't control kind of his impulses, his actual anger, almost like the Hulk in some ways. It felt like that he would become the Void, which is this dark silhouetted being that is essentially his dark alter ego that's dark and evil. And now you have this being that is incredibly powerful, but now it's evil, you know? And the good guy knows what's up. It's like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation. Like the person who is essentially Sentry knows that this is true. And from what I remember in the comic books, like there's a failsafe, which is that they will, like, Sentry can't live with the memories of what he had done when he was in the Void. And so he just forgets. He has a lapsed memory there. It's incredible. Tool to make this character have a lot more depth to him. So I like that. Dude, the Void was fucking tight. Like every time that they showed scenes with the Void and like him interacting with it, and when you see the Void the first time, like even in the movies, like, or sorry, the trailer, you see the Void kind of doing stuff. Like, that's tight, and that whole sequence is just tight, and it just feels incredibly impossible for the Thunderbolts to even get remotely close to this guy. And that's kind of where I think, narratively speaking, it falls apart. Now, what I mean by this is that I don't think that it should be impossible for a small group of individuals, like, that have no superhuman strength or ability, can't overcome something that is that, right? Something that is incredibly impossible to defeat. Like, I'm all about that. That's what makes great films, right? Like when you have a villain of some sort that seems almost impossibly difficult to challenge. Like when you first see Thanos, for instance, like beat the living snot out of the Hulk, you know, like just freaking world start his ass back to Earth. You're just kind of like, oh, what? This dude is tough, and he doesn't have any of the um, Infinity Stones. He's just raw, powerful, and that's incredible. It's an incredible challenge to put in front of all of the Avengers, right? So you have this character in the story for all intents and purposes. Like there's a scene where they like all try to fight him. And this is one of my favorite fight scenes. Dude. It's just like they try to fight him when he's still Sentry, and he's just like, "Listen, guys, you guys are the bad guys. You need to go to jail. You need to turn yourself in." And just effortlessly defeats them all. And it's freaking awesome. It's so cool. You know, it made me like want him to fight some other superheroes that are super strong. You know, just to see how he would hold up. Because a lot of these characters are just not that strong compared to like some of the heroes that we're used to. And so seeing all that, experiencing all that, I was in for it. I was like cool with it, and I was fascinated with what the potential solution to defeating this guy would be. So I was all about it. I was really into it. But as like the movie starts going on, I started to realize there's no tools that I could think of that I felt were going to be powerful enough for this to stick. Because in the very beginning of the movie, they kind of posture this idea of Yelena is essentially, at odds with losing her sister and like her role and having this darkness inside of her. And that's like the general theme of all the characters. Like they all have a bit of a darkness in them and regrets, of who they are. And that's essentially embodied by the void. So I think metaphorically, all the pieces were there. So I was okay with this. But I think that they didn't like lock it down enough so that each character thematically settled on these types of regrets meaningfully. So what I mean by this is like you double down on what each individual character brings to the table when it comes to this feeling of regret and feeling of betrayal to oneself and feeling like you're worthless and you're a loser. And she even says like they're losers, right? But like that you're worth nothing to nobody. It's kind of the thing that puts Sentry at odds with the Void. Like he feels worthless. There's a really endearing moment where you see kind of the dark, shadowy life that the character Bob, who is Sentry, has with like their relationship to their father. And it's very obviously abusive, and you're just like, okay, got it. To me, it's like everybody was relatively vanilla. Everybody had one kind of just overarching thing where we're just a bunch of rejects. You know what I mean? But then if you think about like a movie like The Breakfast Club, the difference between kind of a drama like that is that they spend a lot of time letting you know what archetype each of these characters are and what they're battling internally. And I think if that's what it would have been, like more like The Breakfast Club, but with these Thunderbolts, and that's the genre, it's kind of like a teen drama, like coming of age story, then I think it would have landed because all of the themes were there. Like, I mean, let me be clear. I think it still did okay, but I think it would have just really stuck and potentially been a super tearjerker, Because if you think about The Breakfast Club, like, you have the jock, but then he's feeling like he has to live up to unrealistic standards, And then you have like the cheerleader who has to, also have her own standards, but basically is treated like she's a slut. Like she has an identity that is not true. She isn't that. She actually has never been with anybody, And the rebellious punk rock kid is a jerk off, but for good reason. Again, he has an abusive father. Like he has somebody in his life. He has a lot of trauma that kind of allows us a window into why he's not such a nice guy, And it like like these themes are compounded. Like they're just super strong, and so they when they kind of resolve these conflicts, it really hits. And I think they could have done this with all these characters. They could have the Captain America uh, guy. They would have really leaned into that. Maybe that could have been cool. Yelena, maybe the idea of feeling like she had no choice. I think that was kind of the heart of what was her tragedy. I'm trying to think about it more deeper, but this is why I'm not a writer. Usually, I would have a person who is a writer hear me kind of have these types of perspectives, and then they'll have much more elegant solutions than me coming off the dome as I'm painting. But I think you start to get what I'm saying. Like, I think if it would have doubled, like, there was the other, I don't even remember the other character. It was the Taskmaster? Master? No, that was the other, I'd forget. The one that, like, copies the moves of Taskmaster. But what's the other one? Like, Ghost? I forget. But, like, even her, like, I don't really know what her role was other than just being another misfit. And then Bucky, the Winter Soldier, like, was only there for kind of like the last bit of it, which felt like a huge waste. And honestly, I don't think that his redemption arc needed to be the star of the show. I think that making it Yelena was fine. I was into that. But again, there's pieces of him. Oh, yeah, there's a good one. Like basically trying to assimilate. There's like this thing that happened during Vietnam where a lot of the soldiers who came back were basically treated like, pretty much like shit. Um, because of just the consequence of the Vietnam War, right? It was pretty controversial. And so I think that maybe him trying to become a politician, there could have been something there, being like you can't really like the scandal of being the Winter Soldier, being like an embodiment of the one person that might have all the right pieces to actually resolve their challenges still has to live with their past because again all of these people should embody some metaphor and Bucky could have simply just been that could have simply just been even when you try people will treat you like shit, you know, where all these other characters are not even trying, he's trying and Damon demonstrating to them that it is not worth doing, you know. And then again, the Captain America guy, Walker, his is an easy one. I think you could double down on like trying to assimilate to being a normal person. Like he doesn't want to be a politician. He wants to be the super soldier, and realizing that his only value as a super soldier makes him fail at everything else. Like he again still lost in this idea that all the mistakes he did were for the greater good. Like he's still kind of caught in this I'm not really a bad guy. I'm doing what must be done type vibe. I think that could have stuck with him, you know, kind of like you got to crack a couple eggs to make an omelet type guy, even though the eggs that he's cracking don't need to be cracked because you're not making an omelet, you're making toast, and you're cracking some eggs while making some toast, and so that could have been the kind of metaphor for him. I don't know enough about the ghost lady to come up with anything off the dome, but I could simply just learn more about her, and I'm sure there could have been something. And then Yelena, okay, just thinking about this further, maybe she could have been something along the lines again, like living in the shadow of her sister. So okay, so she is chasing that legacy, kind of like what the Walker's trying to do with Captain America, but realizing the legacy that she was following, like she was following her sister, and then her sister ended up becoming a hero. So she feels kind of like somewhat betrayed that her sister, and I think that was a little bit of what happened in the Black Widow movie. So just like harness that energy a little bit more. That her sister was a deadly assassin, but kind of like got out of it and is looked at as like a hero, and she kind of feels like maybe that's unfair. So she's like, I did follow someone's footsteps that I felt like I had to, and they ultimately betrayed me indirectly by becoming the very thing that we were never trained to do, which is being good guys. You know what I mean? So there could be something there. And all of this to say is because the main conflict or the main challenge that they all encounter when they're dealing with the void is that the void is like basically an embodiment of that. Because what's his name? Bob, like basically Sentry. Yeah, he was addicted to drugs. He had an abusive relationship with his father, and one of the lines that he says in the movie that I thought was really cool and powerful, which was, I always ruin stuff. I always ruin everything, and it's kind of feeling like that. Like he feels like he's can't do anything right, and Yelena, for her credit, is not giving him that lift. She's being very supportive. She's trying to like be the mother he never had type vibe. Um, but ultimately, his dad like beat his wife, and his mom was always trying to like get him out of those conflicts. And when he tried to stick up to his mom's like, "It's your fault anyway. You always ruin everything." She like didn't support his uh, heroicism, you know, which kind of spawns this trauma that he has. But I think it could be more than that. I think he can have all of these complex feelings. That's the thing that I think needed to happen. Like it needed to be even more deep. Like Sentry, the person, Bob, should have had every vector that all of these anti-heroes had. Yelena has like following the footsteps of somebody she ultimately feels betrayed her. Like she went into a life that she only like went into because she thought her sister would be happy and her father would be happy with that, and realizing that it made her like this fucking murderer assassin, you know. And she feels betrayed and feels like I have all these terrible memories now because of this, and you guys fucking fuck me over this. So you have that in Sentry. Then you have the feeling of, trying to live up to like the name of Captain America with Walker, and what it means to basically crack a couple eggs to make an omelet type guy. Like, you see that also in Bob and Sentry, like in some fashion. Bucky, like when you feel like you're trying to do the good things, and you still are hated, or you still fuck it up somehow, you know. And again, see that in Sentry. You feel me? And I think then you just find a really poetic way for them all to realize that they're all pieces of the problem here, and that they have no way of resolving this conflict that Sentry has cerebrally, and that's a problem. So they're unable to crack them, you know, and that's like kind of like the spirit of what I loved about the premise. And I think that if they would have just stuck that and found, again, very poetic and elegant ways for these heroes to overcome their traumas and their disagreements, then they would have had the ability to not just metaphorically, but like maybe even literally show like them doing heroic acts that represents the thing that they couldn't be able to absolve, until they got together and they started working together and they started to find the humanity together. Then I think it would have really stuck, because it was all there, man. It was all these pieces were there. I could feel it. And I was like, oh man, because they're then like the way that they ultimately resolve a lot of stuff is like they just do heroic stuff, but it's like it's not nicely attached to kind of their specific challenges. They just now are heroes. They're just helping people. And then like when he starts to basically have a mental break, they're just there to helping him out. They're just giving him a hug. It's like, you're not alone. Like, we got you. But it's like, did he really feel like he was alone? Like I don't know if he like that mattered as much to me as an audience member that was bothering him. It was more like that he felt like he's a screw up and he can't fix that. you know? And I felt like there was a better metaphor there to teach the audience and then also make us really, like I said, tears. Because then we could see him overcoming that. And I think they casted a pretty good actor that could have gave a great performance of like basically coming to this resolve. Because it was dope, man. I love like when they go into basically the void and they're like trying to deal with all their own traumas. Like that's a place that I'm saying like they all that could have been the metaphoric and physical ability of them breaking through their each individual traumas that allows them to even get to Bob, aka Century, and help him. You know, but it wasn't like that. It felt really kind of like rushed, to be honest, towards the end. And I think that they were trying to do the spy espionage kind of vibes for the first half of the movie, and then it's like this kind of love dubby genre film, like coming of age. But it's like they wasted too much time being a spy espionage movie when in my mind it should have always from the very beginning been just like Suicide Squad meets The Breakfast Club. You know what I mean? And then I think they could have overcome the ultimate villain, which was a metaphor, right? More meaningfully. And I think this movie would have been a fucking hit. But I think it's just good. I think it's C minus or C plus, B minus. You know, I think it's just good. It was a good movie. I liked it. I liked watching it. I had a good time. But I was like, oh man, because okay, when you think about Iron Man, the metaphor is clear. It's like your own ambitions and greed and ego can prevent you from being a good person ultimately. And it was like a really good kind of like metaphor and analogy on America as an arms dealer ultimately, which we are, right? And there's this really amazing moment in the Iron Man movie, literally where Tony Stark gets bombed in the very beginning, and a missile of his lands like right next to him, and it says Stark Industries. So it's like he's getting attacked by his own weaponry, and then he gets enslaved to build weapons for terrorists, which basically snaps him out of it, out of this kind of ego and greed. You know what I mean? And the rest of the movie is just a metaphor for that. Like it's just he's trying to build an arc reactor to basically give energy for everyone free, And then his business partner is like, nah, dude, we'll just make better weapons. It's like, how did you make the Iron Man suit? Like then the rest of the movie is clear. It's very clear what the motivations are of the villain. It's very clear of what our hero needs to overcome, you know? Um, it's very nice, very clean, very well written, and well told story. The themes are very, very clear. And again, I think the themes in this movie weren't unclear. I think they were there and very, very obvious to me in a lot of ways. But it was a little fuzzy. It could have been a little bit clearer, a little bit sharper, you know? And man, I think it would have, like I said, I think it would have been a unique version of a superhero movie because they had all the tools to play up. Like, because it's already fascinating to have essentially Superman, but instead of like Superman meets the Hulk, but instead of the Hulk being this uncontrollable rage monster, and then Bruce Banner just being a smart, uh, basically just a genius, like a scientist. It's like no, it's like imagine if Superman can turn into, um, shit, I don't know. I was gonna say Doomsday, but that doesn't. That's not a good example. Like not even like I'm thinking another character like General Zod. Essentially, like just a mirror version. Like he's not. He has all the same powers. He's just now evil, right? And the good guy is stuck in the trauma, and you had to break him out of that. It's not like rage; it's the trauma that's getting him stuck in this thing, and then he erases his memory as a tool to try to prevent himself from reliving that trauma over and over again. You know, it's a fascinating character design. I like it. So that's the villain of the film. Then make every hero need to defeat that villain, and the metaphor that the villain represents, I think would have really hit it. So, yeah, I think again, if you guys watch it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like it just kind of like wraps up pretty softly. It doesn't do it as sharp as I would like it to be. I think if it was a little bit sharper, this would have been a hit. Truly, I think people would have been like talking about like, damn, the movie was so good because they would have been crying. Because when you start talking about trauma and all the pieces are there, like all the stuff that Yelena had to go through, the stuff that Walker went through, like all of it's fucking real, dude. Like it's real stuff, and we already know what Bucky went through, right? The scene when in Civil War, when Tony finds out that Captain America knew that Bucky did something bad, bro, I was getting choked up. I was like, oh my god, no! Like Rogers, what are you doing? it was it was good. It was a good emotional reaction I had, you know. And then the villain was just this regular dude, right? Like this guy who was like, yeah, you fucked up my past, the Winter Soldier, and all y'all heroes. So all of you guys deserve to fucking die, you know? And I want you guys to know the truth of your fucking treachery and treason. It's good because he didn't really even. That was the beauty of it. Like he didn't do anything other than reveal the truth ultimately, and that was enough to drive the entire fucking story and stick that landing of that story. Because then you have the great fight between Iron Man and Tony Stark, and when they meet up again later in Endgame, it's like Tony is you could still he has so much resentment and ultimately recluses himself, right? And he just leaves the entire Avengers. It's just all good. It's just all good storytelling. That's classic old school Marvel that I fucking miss, man. And I think they had it. I think they had pieces there. I don't know what might have happened that might have prevented that. I'm sure the writers might have had all the stuff in mind, but then they just maybe ran out of time. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. But out of all the latest Marvel movies that came out in the last 5 to 6 years, this by far was like the one that I was like, oh man, if we had like a pretty solid Marvel Cinematic Universe right now, this would have been good. This would have still stuck. You know, it would have been okay. It would have been all right. It would have been amongst the good leads of movies that were coming out. But anyway, I painted this enough. I've just been smudging it this entire time. It's a cool. I loved every time they showed the Sentry being the Sentry and the Void being the Void. And there was a fight between the Void and the Sentry. Like that should have been better. But anyway, I was just like, God, this is fucking rad, dude. It's hard for me to explain. Like it felt like it almost might have been wasted in this current moment during the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? I felt like it might have just been accidentally wasted on this shit. So anyway, oh my god, this has went on for like almost 30 minutes. Can't believe it. Anyway, that was kind of my review of the film and what I think they could have potentially done better. Again, this is just my opinion, but I think ultimately it was a really ultimately I think it was a really good film. I liked it a lot. Sorry, my wife just gave me a kiss. It was nice. Um, yeah, I think the movie is good, man. I think people should go watch it. Give it a shot. Let me know what you guys think if you do watch it. Um, makes me wish. It's hard to explain. Like it makes me wish there was more of a lead up and more of a after excitement, kind of like what we used to have in the Marvel movies back when they were leading up to Avengers Infinity War. You guys remember that time? What a great time to watch superhero movies of like this kind of classic genre. that we're used to. Yeah, it was it was really good. And like I'm telling you, like I feel like this is not gonna stick. And I'm like, the Sentry was so dope, though. The Sentry and the Void were it was such a cool idea. And I wish it would have stuck. I don't know how else to say it. And because if it would have stuck, what that would have meant then is that it would be the next chapters of the cinematic universe. It could have been the quote unquote spark that leads us into a proper Avengers story, similar to what Iron Man began in the other cinematic timeline, you know? And I actually would have been okay with that. I would have been okay with this being the start of that, and maybe approaching the next series of movies less like these kind of like classic genres and these new genres, similar to like my point about the Breakfast Club vibes. You see what I'm getting at? And that could be cool. That could have been different, and that could have been interesting. I don't know. Either way, I freaking loved the Void and the Sentry. It makes me want to go read the comics now about this motherfucker. I was like so intrigued every time this guy was on the camera. I think Bob, the character, could have been a little less flimsy, but I get it. It was for the greater storytelling. But I think the actor they cast was really good for that role, but could have potentially reined it in a little bit more. That was kind of just a more of like a general character note, but I didn't hate it. It just felt a little, yeah, just a little flimsy at some points. But I get it. He needed to be like a broken child. And yeah, there's a moment where he's like, well, why do I have to listen to you? I'm like, oh, fucking God. That felt really out of character of who we were introduced to this entire time. And him even engaging in conflict with the people that he was just hanging out with also felt out of character. I think there could have been a better set of dialogue. Again, doubling down on the idea that you're good for nothing, even when you're literally the most powerful being potentially on the planet in the universe. You are literally still worthless. If that would have been presented to him, that could have tipped him over to turn into the Void. And I think that would have been a better beat in the overall narrative than just, oh my God, and then she like tries to kill him, and then he turns into the Void. That felt cheap. I felt like he should have actually lost composure, and that is the problem. That is the conundrum that Sentry, is trying to deal with. You know, when he's Sentry and Bob, he's like trying to take yoga classes. You feel me? He's trying to be like the Hulk. Talks to Bruce Banner. He's like, how the fuck you deal with it? You know, that could have been great. But anyway, but maybe I don't know enough about the character to have enough authority on this. Either way, I'm bouncing. Hope you guys watch the film. Give it a review. Let me know what you think. If you already saw it, please let me know what you think. If you're not gonna go watch it, it's all right. Wait for it to come out to DVD, so you should still watch it. Cheers.